to eat. And I'm going to start out by saying there are probably, 100 or more versions of don don noodles. So if you have seen something different in the past, or this is, not exactly the way, I don't know, your grandmother made it, that's fine, because I'm also sorry, I'm going to get rid of this pop-up in the middle of my screen. I'm also a gumbo fan, and I know that every single grandma has their own gumbo recipe. So I think this is a really great, approachable weeknight dinner idea. And I hope that you're going to love making it with me. And as Britt said, I am a cooking teacher by profession. I've trained in France and worked in restaurants, but my love is teaching cooking and trying to simplify things and make people really feel comfortable in their kitchen. So if you have questions while we're going along, I really would love you to ask. So don't feel like there's any question that's too simple, too, whatever, because everybody's had that question. I guarantee that I had it at one point in my life too. And maybe like some of our young guests there in Tyler's camera, right? We all start somewhere. So please don't feel intimidated to ask any question of any type. I mean, maybe I'll be able to answer it too. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is just go over the ingredients and our equipment to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. It's really helpful when you cook to do what chefs like to call mise en place, which means everything in its place. So especially with a relatively quick recipe like this, we want to make sure that we're not we don't turn the stove on and then run to the refrigerator and we can't find the sesame oil or whatever. So I have set up here for you my ingredients. And what we're going to start with is the chili oil. So we'll use some sesame oil, some chili flake, and some garlic to make a really delicious chili oil. And the leftovers are great, so we can talk about that later. And to make that, I have kind of a small pot. Now the recipe says to use the same skillet that we'll use that will brown our protein in, which I highly recommend. I am so tired of doing dishes during this pandemic, but I'm going to do it in a separate skillet that's lighter colored, because I want you to be able to see the color of my oil, but just to let you know that. And then I have I have my sausage. My ground pork is over there. Sorry, it's staying cold. But with the ground pork, we'll mix that with some mushrooms that we'll chop and a shallot. So I have those out and ready. We'll chop those together if you haven't done that already. And then we have a flavoring sauce, which is basically the don don sauce. And in that I've got some soy sauce out. My soy sauce we use a lot, so I have a big container of it. I have some hoisin, and I do have gluten-free hoisin, which is not that hard to find. And if you're not familiar with hoisin sauce, it is a 5-spice, so Chinese 5-spice flavored plum sauce. It has kind of a thick consistency, but it has star anise, clove, and some, I can't remember all 5 spices off the top of my head, but anyway, it's a great flavor. And this is the main flavor of our sauce tonight. And there's a little honey to help sweeten that up a little bit. And I have tahini because I cook a lot with tahini, and I'm not a huge peanut butter fan. I like almond butter. So I'll be using some tahini, but you could use creamy peanut butter, or there's also a Chinese sesame paste if you have that. And we'll have a little splash of rice wine vinegar just to kind of balance all that flavor. So when we have all those sweets, we want to balance it with a little bit of sour. Okay, so those are up, and I don't want to forget, in our sauce, we'll also have some fresh greens. I have baby spinach, and then I also have 2 cups of chicken broth. All right, so that's a lot. I'm just going to give you a breathing space here. Are there any questions about those ingredients? All right. Perfect. I'm going to set this big tray off to the side. The first thing that we'll do today is I like to slice my garlic because I really love the way the garlic looks in the chili oil. So you could crush it. You could use a garlic press. Those are all fine. But I want to just speak, especially because I know we have some younger cooks in the room, I want to talk about knife safety. So the safest way to hold your knife is what we call a pinch grip. So I'll be pinching the back of my knife with my fingers here on the top of the handle. I see sometimes beginning cooks hold their knife in like this, and that's actually not as safe because your knife moves around a little more. So I want you to really be able to control your knife by holding on very close to the blade. And then anytime my other hand is going to be stabilizing something that I'm cutting, I'm always going to have my fingers curled back. You know, I don't know if you all watch TikTok, but I watch them with my kids sometimes, and I see people doing this as they cut, and I just want to I have to go by that. I can't watch that video. We want to make sure that we don't trim our fingers, our fingernails, get that in the food. And also cuts on your hand are just awful. They hurt, they take a long time. We don't want to do that. So I'm going to slice my garlic, and I'm going to hold my fingers back like this and just cut it. It doesn't have to be very thin, and it doesn't have to be completely the same. And if you are feeling confident, you could even put 2 cloves together and hold them. And you can probably tell I'm also using my fingers here as a cutting guide. So I'm moving my hand back, and I'm letting my knife float against the my knuckles like that. All right, and I have my computer in gallery mode so I can see most of your screens. So if there's ever anything you want to show me, just let me know. It did have it in gallery mode, it just flipped. Go back. Okay, so I have my garlic sliced. The other thing you could have done, I guess I should have saved one, is if you wanted to just crush it, you could put your clove down on the cutting board and just smash it with the side of your knife. The idea is to get the garlic flavor into the oil. We don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy. So now I'm going to put into my pot the garlic. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of chili flakes. So I have this really nice fresh chili flake. I'm going to take the lid off, so I don't want to shake it like a pizza shaker. And I'm going to kind of use a cook's measuring spoon, which is the palm of my hand. So I know that the palm of my hand, when I fill it, is about a tablespoon. And I like chili, so I'm going to use the 2 measurement, the 2 tablespoons. And I can actually show you that. People sometimes challenge me. If I take this and I dump it into a tablespoon, that is 1 tablespoon of chili. So when you're in a restaurant, I know you can, well, your hand is a little smaller for the short person in Tyler's kitchen. You're going to have to put your name. What's your name?
Flavia.
Flavia. Okay, Flavia, your hand is a little smaller, so you'll have to decide for yourself what a tablespoon looks like in your own hand. But that's a great way to cut down, like, who likes to wash dishes? Not me, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to put those 2 very generous tablespoons in there. And now I'm going to put a third of a cup of sesame oil. And I have already measured one out for myself. So I have a third of a cup of sesame oil. And you'll notice that sometimes in the kitchen, we warm oil up and then we put the ingredients in it. This time I'm not doing that. I'm putting everything in together. I'm going to give it a little stir. If you live somewhere where it's cold, you might feel like this bear on my spatula. So I'm going to put this now on the stove over a low flame for about 5 minutes. So it looks good. It actually smells amazing already, just because that sesame oil is just such a craveable aroma. It just smells so good. Okay, so does it smell good, Flavian? Yeah. Do you like spicy? You can do thumbs up if you want. I'll try to ask thumbs up questions. So you guys gotta...
It's Flavia, and yes, I do like a little bit spicy.
Flavia. Okay, awesome. Perfect. So I'm gonna let this go back here on my burner for a few minutes. And our next step will be to make our flavoring sauce. So the flavoring sauce will be used in 2 different steps of the recipe. We'll use it to flavor the broth that we'll end up putting the noodles in. And we'll also use it to flavor our protein. So I'm going to use ground pork. The recipe suggests that you could use chopped pecans, which I think is a brilliant protein substitution if you like pecans, because they have the protein piece on a don don noodle should be crispy crunchy. And pecans already come out crispy crunchy, which is great. But you could also use any kind of ground meat, including the meatless substitute ground meat. So it's kind of wide open in what you want to pick. So remember, here's our Here is my tray of items that we're going to use. And as I keep saying, I don't like to wash dishes. So I am going to make this in a measuring cup. That way I can just pour it out. And so to start my measuring cup, I already have a 1/2 cup of soy sauce in the cup. And I just want to draw your attention back to your stove. My chili oil is now kind of bubbling and simmering. And I'm going to turn it down even farther. And, you know, if we're lucky at the end of the day, this garlic is going to be kind of crispy, crunchy, which is just delicious. So keep an eye on it. We don't want the garlic to burn. And here we go. Okay, so I have as I said, I have my soy sauce already measured out. I'm doing mine instead of a bowl. I'm just doing it right in a measuring cup. That way, as I said, I can pour it out. So I have a 1/2 cup of soy sauce. And to that, I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of the hoisin sauce. And so the hoisin sauce I pre-measured out into this little container because when you pour it out of the bottle, it's just painfully slow. So that way I can do it a little quicker. So I've got this 1/4 cup. And if you don't have these little OXO measuring cups, these are just the best thing in the whole world for measuring because you can look, you can look down on the cup and see the measure without having to, you know, squat down and look at the place. And it's measured in, this little one I like, it's measured in tablespoons and ounces. And it also tells you that it's a 1/4 cup. So these are really sort of brilliant. Put that one off to the side. Give that a little stir. All right, and then we want a tablespoon of honey, which I'm going to measure out first. And I'm not going to put it in the palm of my hand. I bet you're going to ask me that. I'm not going to do that. I am going to use the measuring spoon for that. And if you get a little over, that's fine. And I did it first because then I can use the rice vinegar to help rinse it out. I'm going to turn my stove off now, and I'll show you my garlic oil in just a minute. One of my other favorite kitchen tools are these little teeny tiny spatulas. They're great for getting the last bit of, you know, honey or something out, but I can also use it to empty out my measuring spoon. I really like that. So I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar. So you probably know that vinegar is the secondary fermentation of something alcohol. So apple cider vinegar started its life as hard apple cider, and rice vinegar starts its life as rice wine, which gives it that its unique flavor. It's a nice light vinegar without a whole lot of like, you could actually substitute white vinegar, apple cider vinegar in this recipe if you don't have rice wine vinegar. I would probably avoid, I'm actually using my my taste part of my brain. I was going to say I would avoid balsamic, but maybe balsamic would be fine because this is such a dark sauce. So you can substitute quite a lot of different vinegars in that as well. And now 3 tablespoons of either creamy peanut butter or, as I have here, tahini. And tahini is amazing. It's another sesame product. It's just ground sesame. So I have this beautiful tahini. Now this will also help thicken our sauce at the end. And I'm using my tablespoon more as a ladle here. A little bit messy. I'm going to move this off to the side so you can see. I'm just going to stir that up. I'm going to use my little spatula to clean up my spoon. So this is our flavoring sauce, and this sauce is so strong and delicious. It really is going to carry the flavor of what we're doing tonight. When you use the chili flake, if you had other kinds of chilies as well, like Sichuan chili, peppercorns, things like that, you can also use other kinds of chilies. So just to let you know. So that is my seasoning sauce. And I'm going to bring, ooh, I've got delicious honey. I almost licked my fingers right in front of you. I'm going to clean my little spot of honey off there. So now I have a little jar to put it into. This hot chili oil with absolutely gorgeous garlic flakes in it. So we'll use this chili oil a couple times as well. Just get that off to the side. Okay, so we have our two amazing flavors here. And I see some people are still measuring out their tahini or their peanut butter. That looks great. So it's kind of, we've got some easy stuff here now. We will be cooking some noodles and we'll be cooking our protein next. So let's do the noodles first so that we can, when we take the noodles out of the pan, we can use that same pan to warm up the chicken broth, which will create our sauce. I'm going to show you, I have, silly me, it's Lunar New Year. I have a beautiful Ranch 99 Chinese market across the street from me almost. And it was packed last weekend. It was just absolutely full of people. And there must have been 18 people in line for each check stand. So I have a Korean market nearby too. So I went to the Korean market and I got these noodles. These are actually labeled as udon noodles, but they're perfect for dandan noodles. And one of the great things about dandan noodles is if you use a white noodle, the way the chili oil looks on the white noodle. But it is not easy to find this kind of noodle in gluten-free. So if you happen to have a gluten allergy, absolutely any noodle can be substituted, including something like this. These are edamame spaghettis, and we use these in our house a lot, or that banza, which is a chickpea pasta. They all will work just fine. I'm going to use this one tonight because I can then show you like the beautiful contrast on that. So I have a pot back here on the stove to bring some water to a boil. So we'll get that rolling. So what kind of noodles did everybody find? Does anybody, those of you who are cooking along? Yep. Oh, dry noodles. Perfect. Those are so great to have. Egg noodles from the in the pantry. Thai rice noodles. Those are great too. Perfect. Yeah, so you'll want to cook them according to your package instructions. So what we're looking for is it's always so hard to describe a noodle that's almost done, right? Because we will be tossing them with the warm meat at the end, so they will cook a tiny bit more one more time. Do you have a question? No? Okay. So yeah, gluten-free pho noodles are great. All the noodles made out of rices. There are so many options these days. So if you have a food sensitivity, it's really easy or easier really than ever to find a great substitution.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
This is Tyler, I'm Flavia's dad. We have these rice noodles that their whole cooking instructions say just to soak them in hot water for some time and then be done. Is that normal, weird, okay? What do I do with that?
Okay, so the reason that they have told you that is because when you make pad thai, you start with a soaked noodle and you're basically cooking it as you make the pad thai. So the liquid that's in the pad thai sauce finishes the cooking process.
Okay.
So for this pasta tonight, you're going to want it a little more cooked than just soaked in hot water.
Okay.
So what I'm going to recommend is you bring some water to a boil, but it's only going to maybe take 2 minutes.
Okay, just a quick.
Yeah, just a quick dip. So what you're looking for is that noodle. You'll pull one out with a fork or a tong and bite into it. And if it's the kind of texture that you'd like to eat, then it's ready.
Okay.
And I'd say that's the instruction for everybody, for all of your noodles, no matter, because we've got kind of a choose your own adventure in the noodles here. That's exactly what I'm going to do too. Because the instructions on a package can be very wrong. And it's actually one of the funny stories of my marriage. When I first met my husband, who's an engineer, we were making pasta together one night, and the instructions on the box said boil for, I think it was 6 to 8 minutes. And he's like, 6 or 8, which is it? I need to know, right? So, if the instructions don't seem very obvious to you, I really, one of the things I love as a cooking teacher is to encourage people to use their intuition. So we talk in our recipe packets about intuitive shopping, but intuitive cooking is just as important. So if you look in your pot of noodles and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, those noodles are overcooked, or, that is not ready yet, you are probably right. The package can be wrong, or, you're, like when people say, put something in the oven at 350 for, 45 minutes, trust your nose if it starts to smell smoky. Okay. So I have my noodles here. These were frozen. I should also add, you can get fresh noodles, you can get frozen noodles, and you can also get dried noodles. One of the advantages of fresh or frozen noodles is they do cook a little faster because they're not fully dried, right? So my water is almost at a boil, but not quite. So I'm just going to wait a second to put these in. Does anybody else have any other questions about any of the ingredients? Were you able to find, well, one reason I love this recipe is because it's flexible. You can use the peanut butter. My husband actually thinks it's not don don noodles if it doesn't have peanut butter in it. So he'll be sad. I'm using tahini. You all find everything fine? Okay, I'm going to assume that's the case. Yeah, salt in the water is always a good idea for pasta. It helps season the pasta. However, I am not a fan of making the water as salty as the ocean, because if it's a pasta dish, I'm often using pasta water to help either thin or change my sauce. And if the cooking water is too salty, it makes it, not edible for anything else. But tonight, our dish is going to have a lot of soy sauce in it and a lot of flavors. So you would not necessarily need to salt the water, but you could. It's always a good practice. The chat says, oh, that's right. I did not add water, and you're exactly right. The recipe does call, thank you for catching me on that. It does call for, because it's not in my ingredient list, I didn't note that, but we are going to dilute it with a third a cup of water. So I have just enough room in my measuring cup to add that water. And the reason we're doing that is if you've actually tasted the sauce, and again, I encourage tasting in everything we do. There's nothing in this sauce that's raw or inedible. Tasting it to see how you like it, because maybe you would like it a little more sour. I am not a super sweet person. I don't like a lot of honey in mine. I kind of went down on the honey a little bit. And I just know that from previous experience. Okay. Perfect questions. Thank you so much for your questions. Okay, my water is now simmering pretty well. And because these are fresh noodles, I'm going to go ahead and put them in.
Unmuted.
And
our sauce was so tasty.
what else would you eat that sauce on, Flavia?
Flavia.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't know. I can't get my vowels right today. It's my fault. I'm sorry.
What else would you put that sauce on? Lentils.
Yes.
Ooh, lentils. That'd be great. Do you think it would be an interesting salad dressing?
Ooh, yeah.
Like a spinach thing.
Yeah, on spinach or something like sliced cabbage, like a real, like a crunchy salad with this really yummy, savory kind of, maybe you'd put a little bit more rice vinegar to make it a salad dressing. See, it's really good to use your imagination when you cook, because things don't always only have one answer. Okay, I'm just about to go over my pot back here. So I should have picked a slightly larger pot, but that's okay. And I also have lost my tongs. I'll be right back. So I like to use tongs when I cook noodles in a pot like this, so that I can lift them up, stir them. But this is how I'll check when they're done. My package said 5 to 6 minutes. But I can already kind of tell by the texture here, as I lift them up, they're a little bit hot. Guess that one down. I can tell by the texture as I pick them up that they're almost ready. They really don't take very long. So as your pasta cooks like this, you'll find that the surface starch on the pasta will create, with the water, will make these bubbles and the pot can tend to boil over. So there's two ways to stop that. One is to remove it from the heat for just a second, because that cools it off. And another way is to add just a tiny dash of oil or butter, because that breaks the surface tension and makes the bubbles go away. So watch, I'll let them come up and like magic, they sort of go away. All right, my noodles, I think, are done. I'm going to bring one over here just to show you. All right, do not ever throw a noodle at the wall. That's not the right way to find out if they're done. The right way to find out if they're done is to simply try one. Yeah, and so what I'm looking for is a noodle that is still has a little bit of bite in it. It's not too overdone. And as I said, one of the reasons for that is that we will, as we toss these with the warm broth, they'll cook just a little bit more. So right now I'm going to strain them out. And I'm going to wipe this pot out really quickly so that I can warm my chicken broth. Now, to keep these completely vegetarian, if you chose the non-meat based protein for this, vegetable broth would work really well. I have some homemade chicken broth. I used I roasted a chicken the other night. When I roast a chicken, I always take the carcass and I simmer it down because I want to get every last cent out of my purchases. So I have some chicken broth, just going to put it in the pan. We'll bring that to a simmer. And we'll add half of our flavoring sauce. So right now I have a little bit more than a cup in there. And I think I'm going to go just a little bit more. And that's an eyeball measurement. So now I have a flavored chicken broth. And in our flavored chicken broth, we're going to put the greens. So I have spinach. As I said, I have some baby spinach. I'm going to wait for this to come up to a simmer first. That's not going to take very long. Oh. There we go. And you can use other greens too. So again, this recipe is very adaptable. If you had some broccolini, something that was long and green that would be very pretty in the broth, it's really nice to have a little something, a contrast of color in your final bowl as well. So I'm just curious, does everybody have, everybody who's cooking along, did you get spinach? What kind of greens did you get? Okay. So somebody says, can I repeat that about the broth? So I'm not exactly sure which part. However, what I think what I said was I'm using chicken broth. And I made my chicken broth by simmering a chicken carcass that I had cooked for dinner. And then I just strain it off and save that broth for cooking with. But definitely you can use vegetable broth for this. You don't have to use, chicken broth, or you could use a little bit of powdered bouillon as well. But I'm using the same pot I boiled the noodles in because once again, who wants to do any more dishes? So I have that same pot. I just put the broth and I put half of my flavoring sauce in it. Okay, so I've got 2 cups of broth. I've got about half of my flavoring sauce. And as soon as it comes to a simmer, I'm going to put my spinach in.
I was going to answer your question, Chef Peggy, about the greens. We are using spinach with a vegetable broth. We live in a mixed household where Flavia is vegetarian and the rest of us are not. So at this point, we will then diverge and have both a meaty and a non-meaty option to combine at the end.
That's really great. So you can have an omnivorous dinner experience together. And I love that. Yeah. Yeah, why not? I mean, actually, sometimes if you taste the vegetable broth versus the chicken broth, they're even more flavorful. So not a bad option. Okay, so not very exciting, but I'm just going to pop my spinach now into my heating broth. Give it a little bit of a stir. So the point is to wilt these spinaches down a little bit. Spinaches, is that correct? Maybe it's just spinach. All right. And I did something to my burner. It doesn't want to light because the next step is we're going to cook our meat or protein substitute, whatever you're using for your protein. So I have here some ground pork, and I have also, like I said, these mushrooms and a shallot. So let's do a little bit more knife work. I'm going to put my flavorful sauces over here. Let's try to keep them off camera. All right, and I'm just going to put this aside for a moment. So the recipe calls for 2 cups of mixed mushrooms. I had some white button mushrooms that, I don't know, somebody ate today, apparently. So I have some shiitake mushrooms, and I also have this beautiful king oyster mushroom that I just wanted to show you because not everybody has seen them. And also maybe you've seen them and you have no idea exactly what to do with them. These are really delicious meat substitutes. These king oyster mushrooms, if you slice them like this, and then you marinate them a little bit and grill them, they are just absolutely gorgeous in tacos. They've got a very nice sort of meaty consistency. And you can actually even, I kind of cut this one too much. You can cut them like this and may have their like pretend scallops even. So you can cook them with a little bit of a broth and grill them, and they're just really magicians on the plate. But today I want them to be chopped pretty small because I want to mix them in with my ground pork. And I love that the recipe is mixing mushrooms with the other protein because it's one of the best ways, really, if you're looking at cutting down meat consumption for whatever reason, or even just occasionally, mixing it with something like mushroom is a great way to do it. Mushrooms take on the flavor of almost everything that they cook with. So I'm cutting this guy up, cut him into little planks, then I cut him into rectangles, and then I'm just going to sort of rough chop these. So remember, always keep your fingers back. I don't have my fingers exposed. And then once I have these kind of diced, if I wanted to rough chop them, I'm even going to take this hand behind my back and do this. So one of the easiest ways to cut yourself is to become distracted in the kitchen, forget that you have your hand over here, and then accidentally cut yourself. So if you just keep your hand away completely, then you don't have to worry about it. Okay, I'm going to move these guys over. And for my, I have shiitake mushrooms, but they work the same as button mushrooms. Except for that I can stack them so I can go a little more quickly. I'm going to slice them. And then I'm going to line up my slices, turn them 90 degrees, which is easier than turning myself 90 degrees, and dice them one more time. And it flew over here. So the recipe calls for about 2 cups. I'm just going to measure this and see what I've got here. I brought out a lot of mushrooms. This is just under 2 cups, so I'll do a little bit more. Yeah, oyster mushrooms would work absolutely beautifully. The one, excuse me, that king oyster mushroom that I had is just an oyster mushroom that got really giant. So you may or may not know that portobello mushrooms are just giant cremini brown mushrooms. So if you let the mushroom continue to grow and get big, it will take on a slightly different shape. All right, I'll do one more. So we'll get this mise en place all ready before we start our meat. So this is one of the steps, as I mentioned, that we don't want to put the meat in the skillet and then not have our mushrooms chopped up, because while we're chopping our mushrooms, we could be burning our meat. And that would be very annoying. So nobody wants to go to the store at dinner time, right? All right, so that's about 2 cups of chopped mushrooms. And now I'm going to chop my shallots. And not everybody is accustomed to using a shallot. This is a beautiful little onion family, an allium. it is, I think of it as sort of a convenient onion. So you could substitute a quarter of an onion for a shallot, but then you've got a quarter of an onion to refrigerate or figure out what to do with. It's kind of like a nice package of onion. So every time I approach an allium in this shape, I will cut off the stem end, cut off the root end. And just a little tip, whenever you're cooking, I have a scrap bowl off to the side here that I put my scraps in just so I can keep my working space clean of scraps. I don't get them mixed back into what I'm cooking. So I'll cut it in half, and I like to flex it just a little bit like this to get the paper to come off. And one of the annoying things about shallots is sometimes the top of the bulb just still continues to have some papery part on it. So I'll trim that. I'm going to trim this up before I cut it up. They are a little bit harder to peel than an onion. When I worked in restaurants, I was always delighted if we purchased pre-peeled shallots, but at home, it's hard to use a whole gallon of shallots. All right, so one thing I would like to advise you is to never get in the habit, and you'll see people on the Food Channel do this. I know it looks like a very professional thing to do. This horizontal cut into an onion is very dangerous. I have seen people really injure the palm of their hand and really hurt themselves. And there's almost never a reason to make this cut in an allium, in an onion. And the reason for that is this onion, this shallot already has layers in it, like an ogre. To turn a phrase. So see, we've already got layers in there. Making this kind of a cut is just more dangerous than something you need to do. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut along the ridges of the shallot like this. And I will show you. So I did work at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Dijon, France. And we did a lot of very finely chopped things. But look how fine that is. I didn't make that I didn't have to use that dangerous cut, and I can still get a very nice fine shallot. I'm keeping my fingers back like this. I'm not cutting with my hand out like this. You never want to do that. And when you get to the end here of this little piece, which seems a little too, like maybe my fingers are going to be close, you've got two options now. If you make homemade stock, you can just save that, put it aside, put it in your little baggie for when you make stock, or you just lay it down on the counter and chop over it. So once again, if you work at a Michelin-starred restaurant where each one of these little pieces has to be completely square, then put it in your stock. But I don't work there anymore, so I do this.
Can we say hi to our grandma?
Please. Oh my goodness, who's your grandma?
And Aunt Mary Kate.
Hi.
Babe. Oh my goodness.
Hi.
And is that your cousin there?
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah.
A little family cooking class.
I love it.
2 time zones apart.
Rosie.
Very nice. Well, so when you get together in person again, are you going to make this dish for your grandmother?
Grammy says yes. Yes, please.
Grady says you better.
This will be ready in about 10.
Super cool. You know, this is a public feast workshop, and it's really fun to have people come together like this across the platform. But we do one-on-one cooking classes as well. And it's a lot of fun. I've had several times where it's either a family coming together who haven't been able to visit for a while. And in one case, I had 2 friends that had both had babies, and one in New York and one in Chicago. And it's just so fun. It's like so fulfilling for us to get to like be part of getting people together. So yeah, it's a fun part of what we do too.
As a totally unpaid promotion along with that, we have done this before. We've done family like feast baking classes together, and we're doing one on Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, and they're so much fun. So yes.
Super. Awesome. Yeah, I don't even know you, so that's why we'll pay you later. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So I am going to transfer my chopped shallot into my mushrooms so that I can bring it all to the stove together with me. And I'm going to heat my pan now. So I did not, and I might have to actually light my burner because my burner, for some reason, of course, in the middle of a class, the burner wants to give up. Yep. That's going to be exciting. Hang on for just a second. Let me get a longer stick. It's never happened before. It's one of the joys of working in restaurants is that typically the stoves are old and they don't work very well. So you learn lots of ways to light old stoves. There we go. And now I have a flaming paper towel. All right, so this is the skillet that I'm going to cook my protein in. And the recipe calls for a couple tablespoons of sesame oil now in this pan. You could use regular cooking oil if you wanted to, but this is just going to add another layer of that beautiful sesame flavor into what we're cooking. And my skillet is a nonstick skillet. I typically use cast iron, but I felt like this would be a more visible color background for you to be able to see. And I'm going to begin to break this up because our goal is to have a crumble to put on top of our noodles. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to let that warm up in heat. One of the things that I see people do as beginning cooks sometimes is they stir or move the meat or whatever they're trying to brown in a skillet too much. If you do that, you're actually cooling off the skillet.
Can we cook the pork with the garlic?
You can add some garlic to it, absolutely, yeah.
No, can we put it in with the pan with the garlic?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, the recipe says to use the same pan. And I used a smaller pan for my chili garlic sauce because I wanted you to see the color of it. I didn't have a reflected, a pan that I thought would show on camera that well. So yeah, absolutely use the same pan. Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'll show you, if I was cooking this pan would be a little bit too small. That's what I cooked my chili sauce in. But absolutely, again, we're trying to minimize dishes. And I'm going to use my wooden utensil here just to kind of keep crumbling up this pork. So one of the hallmarks of this protein topping on the dantan noodles is that it's crispy and crunchy. Shake it up a little bit there. So you can see I've been breaking it up, but I haven't really made a lot of effort to turn it over yet because I want to get it very, very well browned on the one side.
This may be a question for a different class, but I'm curious if you have a particular wine pairing you might recommend with the dantan noodles.
Oh, such a great question.
And it's not like I have a whole selection available. I'm just curious if there's any perfect match.
Yeah, I mean, I would go with something that's going to hold up to the chili flavor for sure. Like, I wouldn't go with the lighter. If you're going to go with a white wine, I'd maybe go with a really firm Sauvignon Blanc, maybe one of those New Zealand, like the Kim Crawford that has all that green pepper to it. That'd be a really nice combination. And if you're going to lean red, I would probably stay in the lighter reds, like the Pinot Noirs, because again, you've got a lot of tan, like you won't be able to taste a deep red, Cabernet, for example. But I would even maybe pick a beer with this, because I think the carbonation of the beer would really like open up your taste buds.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had looked it up, but it said a Chardonnay and a Malbec, if that helps at all.
You know what? I think the best bottle of wine to have with dinner is the one that's open. That's kind of my philosophy. I'm not going to talk you out of a Chardonnay for sure. And now, if we're going to cook with it, I have one really strong rule, which is that a Chardonnay or a white wine that has been oaked, if you cook with that, it really has an off flavor. The oakiness as it cooks makes the dish not taste very good. But other than that, drink what you've got open for sure. Okay, I'm also cooking with my ears, right? So I'm cooking with my eyes. I'm using my taste and my smell, but I can hear behind me, even though I'm not looking at the stove right now, I can hear what's going on because the intensity of the crackling has turned up. So that means a lot of the water in my ground pork has evaporated and it's frying. So I know it's getting brown on the other side. So now when I give it a little turn like this, you can see I got a really nice crust on that, which is what I'm aiming for. So I really rendered a lot of the fat from this meat out into the pan. And at this point, it's about halfway brown and crispy. I'm going to add my shallot and mushroom. That's the little end of my mushrooms out there. So I want to give it a good stir so that the juice from the meat really gets incorporated on the mushrooms. But then once again, I'm going to leave it. I am not going to toss it. I'm not going to stir it too much. And again, the whole reason for that is I want it to brown. And if I move it around too much, I'm going to break up the heat. It's not going to have contact with the pan and it will steam, right? And I frequently have to remind people that steaming something is the opposite of browning, right? So when it's creating steam, you're not getting browning. So that's why we recommend, like, don't crowd a pan when you're, searing something, for example. All right. So this should be smelling very good right now. You've got the beautiful smell of that allium, the shallot coming up, the meatiness. So Tyler, what is the vegetarian option that you guys have decided to go with for your noodles?
We're doing the pecans.
Pecans, awesome.
I'm very excited for that.
I am such pecan. Oh gosh, I was going to say pecan nut. I guess I can't say that. Too punny even for today. I love pecans for their flavor and their crispiness. So I can't wait to hear how that one turns out. I would have done pecans, but I ate them all. I got a Costco size bag. I've been making some, I'm getting prepped for Mardi Gras. I've been making some pralines and some other things. So
I was just going to say that you ate a whole Costco sized bag of pecans is impressive.
Well, not in the same week or anything. I think I got it right before Christmas because I was making some turtles and, it's, what can I say?
A likely story.
A likely story. Well, they go so well with a cocktail, I toast them up and I toast them thinking if this is going to be for a salad. And then I make a cocktail and they're just so easy to nibble on. So, okay, I'm going to give this another little shake. To move it off the pan and give it a stir. It's really looking beautiful. My shallots are starting to brown a little bit and so are my mushrooms. So this is a great time for me to add, I'm just going to use my thing here to break up. I've got one or two little pieces of meat I want a little bit more broken up. And now we're going to add the other half of our flavoring sauce. So it is going to start to smell so good. If you have neighbors, they're going to come ring the doorbell, I think. Oh, so beautiful. So now don't forget, we've got honey and we've got hoisin sauce in there, which are both sugar containing. So this will caramelize and or burn if you let it go too long. But we do want it to cook down a little bit so it's not super watery. The recipe says to cook it until the sauce coats the meat and it starts to caramelize and get crispy. And so you can see at the edges of my pan that it is, I'm getting bubbles that are like giant bubbles. They're not like water bubbles. And when I move it through the pan, it's not, it's leaving this streak. So it's not super watery, which is great.
Can I ask for a visual check?
Yeah.
This is the pecan one. It
Oh,
seems like
yeah.
a pretty, almost, I
I'd
don't
say
know.
you're done there. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
So the last step that you'll have there is to taste it, right? Taste for seasoning. And just to make sure that you're exactly where you want it, you might want a little dash of soy sauce, a little, something, but that looks beautiful. That's exactly how I want mine to look here. It will be a little thicker, so I think my mushrooms are giving some water out, but yeah.
Yeah, we did a lot of prep in advance since I was with my daughter earlier, so
Yeah,
that's
perfect. Yeah. It's always great when you can do the prep in advance because then you can kind of watch, so you can work along, but also relax a little bit. I really enjoy that. I'd love to attend other people's cooking classes because I do the same thing, right? We never stop learning, even when we're as old as me, as old as a tiger, you can still learn a new trick. All right. So this is great. This is all coating my meat and my mushroom. I'm going to turn this off and we are ready to plate the beautiful bowl of don don noodles. Let me just find my noodles here from my strainer.
Can I ask you a question? So after you pour the
Absolutely.
half of the sauce into that skillet, you're waiting for it to cook off then, correct?
Yeah, we wanted to, I wouldn't exactly say cook off, but we wanted to reduce and begin to coat the meat pretty thoroughly. Yep. Now, my noodles here are a little stuck together. I'm just going to show you that. One of the best ways to learn something in a cooking class is for something to go a little bit wrong. So see how my noodles are a little bit clumpy? I'm going to rinse these with cold water and it's going to make all the difference in the world. So let me just do that really quickly. Nobody wants a clumpy bowl of don don noodles. And I didn't take the time when I strained them. I was talking to you all about stuff. If I had taken this step when I just brought them off the burner, they would have been just fine. But here they are now. See how they're all untangled and beautiful. Okay, so here's the fun part. I have a bowl. And I'm going to bring so this is my pot of my broth. In my case, it was chicken broth, and I've got my spinach in there and half of the flavoring sauce. I'm going to put about, I think my ladle's about 8 ounces, which is a cup. I'm going to go a little light because so you can have your don don noodles as soupy or dry as you want them, right? It's your bowl of noodles. And I like mine kind of in the middle. And now I'm going to put a good serving of noodles on top. And you can see I've got some noodles in there. Let me just do a little bit more. One of the significant ideas of using noodles on Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year is that they symbolize long life. So you want really, this one is I can't find them. I had some really long ones though. As I was trying to get them out of my strainer, I'm like, oh, well, that's a good sign. I've got really long noodles. And now I have my gorgeous pan of this really fragrant meat topping. We will top with a little bit of that. And a little bit of green onion. And I do apologize. I have my green onion is in the refrigerator. Let me just grab it really quickly. It's waiting for me. So I want the green part of the onion to show. I love eating this piece, but I'm going to cut on a steep biased angle. Just some beautiful thin garnishes of green onion. And I'll sprinkle them on top. And now for my chili oil. And this is what is so beautiful with the white noodles. So I love to add these big garlic chunks on top as well. If you wanted to strain this, you could just have the oil part of the chili to add the redness to the noodles. But there we go. Look at that. Gorgeous. Somebody in my family likes to hog all the garlic slices. I don't know who that is. But yeah, so there's my gorgeous bowl. Oh, it smells so good. Have to take a deep whiff of that gorgeous sesame flavor. All right, I might have gone a little faster than you all. So let me know when you have a bowl that I can take a look at, because I love, not only do I love to cook food, but I like to look at other people's food. So if I go into a restaurant, I spend a lot of time watching other people's plates. So it's great. Oh, beautiful. Look at that. That looks great. Mary Kate's camera. That's beautiful. So you got to compete with the grandkids over there on the other camera. So you never know.
They ran away. I had to fetch them.
Can't they smell when dinner's ready?
I guess not.
I just had to taste some of that mushroomy meaty. So it's very intensely flavored. So when you taste the meat, it is very intensely flavorful. It's meant to go on those kind of bland noodles, right? So when you then put the dish all together in your mouth, when you stir it up, then it all balances out. Cute babies. It's fun to see people's kitchens too. I love. That's great. You guys are still stirring. I see over in Susan's camera.
Chef, we have one question from Susan.
How's
What
it
happened
smelling over
to
there?
the mushrooms and spinach?
I'm sorry, Britt. I think that it cut off. What about the mushroom and spinach?
What happened to them? They're wondering where we incorporate them, I think.
So the mushrooms went into my protein, right? Into my ground pork. And the spinach is in my broth here. So in my broth, the chicken broth. So in my chicken broth, I have half of that flavoring sauce and I put my baby spinach. And the mushrooms and the shallots are here completely in disguise. They look just like part of the meat topping. So that's all in the pan together. So now if you happen to miss that step and you don't want to go backwards, you can layer the spinach in with the noodles. So let me grab another bowl. I don't have any more spinach out, or I could just show you. You can just mix the spinach right into the warm noodles and it will wilt them automatically. That would be fine. Just checking chat. Sorry, I missed that question. Somebody's excited for dinner over there. Sometimes the challenge is to show your dish on camera, right? Because you have to tilt everything and you don't want it to slide. But yeah, oh, beautiful, Rose. That looks great. Those noodles look so nice too. Oh, very nice. Look at that. Gorgeous. Is that your pecan version? Look at that. Oh my goodness. So beautiful.
There's the pecan, there's the meat one.
Well, from this distance, they look identical, of course.
This one's darker, and that one's lighter.
Okay, I'll believe you. Oh, I love your bowl. Jeff, that's a great bowl, by the way. Very good. How's it smelling? Anybody taste it yet?
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
I'd love to take a group photo. If everybody would like to show off your bowls of noodles, I'll take a little screenshot.
Oh yeah,
I'll wait till everybody gets situated.
We can't do it.
It's too hard. So sometimes you have to just angle the laptop down or something. I don't know. It's hard.
Smiling faces works too.
Or you can do. I'll do a bite shot. How's that? I'd love to do
That's
these
perfect.
like.
Flavia, do you want to hold up your bowl?
Oh,
Oh,
Oh, I think she went to go get it.
oh, there we go.
Flavia and Tyler. So cool. So Britt's just going hungry tonight.
I am. Oh my gosh. I can smell it from here though.
Yeah. It's just the aroma of sesame oil is so amazing. Very good.
Thank you, Rocky.
Can't wait to get this right in my mouth.
Awesome. Let me take one more. Thank you all so much for celebrating New Year's with us. It's a pleasure to connect with all of you. And we're just thrilled to be part of your celebrations tonight. Bon appetit, and we look forward to seeing you in the next class.
Thank you. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thanks, everybody. It was really fun spending some time with you.
Thank you,
Happy New
Chef
Year.
Peggy.
Thank
Just
you.
keep cooking. Just keep cooking. All right.
Thank you very much.
thank you from Gloucester, Mass.
Oh, you're very welcome. Are you guys snowed in?
Oh, yeah.
We're good.
Awful.
But we're happy.
Well, that's good. Some people like the snow. I actually moved away from the Midwest to get away from the snow. So, okay. Well, take care.